Imagine your only legs were water balloons, and your dinner was falling from the sky from 2 miles up, and by the time it reached you, it had been partially dissolved by pressure, picked apart by everything living between the surface and the bottom, and what arrived on your plate was whatever was left after 2 miles of other things had already eaten from it. That is Tuesday for the sea pig. Sea pig. Most people have never heard of it. The ones who see it for the first time assume it is either a joke or a prop from a film about what the ocean floor looks like in a nightmare. It is neither. It is a real animal. It is one of the most abundant large animals in the deep sea, and it is doing something down there that the entire deep ocean ecosystem depends on. The sea pig is not a pig. It is not a worm. It is not a slug. It is a sea cucumber, specifically a species within the genus Scotoplanes, and it lives on the abyssal plain, the flat sediment-covered floor of the deep ocean at depths between 4,000 and 5,000 meters, in a place where the pressure is 400 times what it is at the surface, and the temperature sits just above freezing permanently, and there has been no sunlight for the entire history of life on Earth. It gets its name from its appearance, which is pink, rounded, soft, and carried on a series of tube feet that inflate and deflate with water to produce movement, which is exactly what water balloon legs would look like if water balloon legs were a real evolutionary solution to the problem of locomotion on the deep sea floor, and in this case, they are. The tube feet that function as its legs are not its only tube feet. The sea pig also has modified tube feet around its mouth and extending from the top of its body like antennae, the ones on top shown in research footage pointing consistently backward in the direction opposite to the animal's movement, which researchers believe function as current sensors, detecting the direction of the slow water flow that carries the chemical signals from food sources across the abyssal plain. The sea pig does not hunt, it does not chase, it does not wait in ambush, it walks across the sediment of the ocean floor and eats whatever is settled there, which is marine snow, the continuous slow rain of dead organic material that falls from the surface 2 miles above, the accumulated remains of everything that lived and died in the water column above, and sank, by the time it arrives, through 2 miles of ocean where other things ate from it at every depth level on the way down. What reaches the sea pig is the fraction that made it, fragments of dead plankton, fish feces, dead jellyfish, bacteria-covered particles, the fine organic coating on the sediment itself. The sea pig ingests the sediment directly, processes the organic material from it, and expels the cleaned sediment behind it as it walks, which means it is simultaneously eating and rearranging the floor of the ocean with every step. This matters more than it sounds. The abyssal plain is not a dead place. It is one of the largest ecosystems on Earth by area, and it processes an enormous amount of organic carbon that falls from the surface above it. The sea pig and animals like it are the mechanism by which that carbon is mixed into the sediment rather than simply accumulating on top of it. They are biological plows, turning the floor of the ocean like earthworms turn soil, and the chemical cycling that results from that turning affects the carbon processing capacity of the entire ocean floor ecosystem. There is something else about the sea pig that research on abyssal communities has documented repeatedly, and that takes a moment to fully picture. Sea pigs aggregate. They do not spread evenly across the ocean floor. They gather in groups that can number in the hundreds or thousands, all moving in the same direction, all oriented the same way, all following the same current signal toward the same food source, a mass migration of pink water balloon-legged animals walking slowly across the floor of the deep ocean in complete darkness 2 miles below the surface of the world. When a large piece of food falls to the abyssal plain, a whale carcass, a dead shark, a large mass of organic material, the sea pigs detect it through the chemical signal it releases into the water current, and they walk toward it. Not quickly. The sea pig moves at a pace that makes a garden snail look urgent, but there is no urgency required when you live in an environment where the food is not going anywhere and nothing is chasing you, and the only competition is other sea pigs walking at the same pace from the same direction. The sea pig has almost no predators at depth, not because it is dangerous, because it is toxic. Sea cucumbers generally, and sea pigs specifically, carry chemical compounds in their body wall tissue that are deeply unpleasant to anything that attempts to consume them. And in the specific case of the sea pig, the pink coloration itself may function as a warning signal, even in an environment with no light to see it by, which is a detail that researchers have not fully resolved, and that sits comfortably in the category of things about the deep sea that are still more question than answer. There is one predator that has solved the toxicity problem. A specific species of small fish has been documented living inside the sea pig's respiratory system, which in sea cucumbers is a series of tubes called respiratory trees that extend through the body cavity and are ventilated by the animal drawing water in and expelling it through the body opening. The fish enters through that opening, lives inside the respiratory tree, exits to feed, and returns. The sea pig continues functioning around a tenant it cannot remove and apparently cannot detect as a problem worth responding to. Imagine renting out your lungs to a fish and not noticing. The sea pig breathes through what is effectively its digestive exit, draws water in and out through the same opening it expels processed sediment through, walks on inflatable water-filled appendages across a floor it is simultaneously eating, and lives in permanent darkness at 400 atmospheres of pressure in water just above freezing, eating the leftovers of 2 miles of other animals' meals. It does this in groups of thousands, oriented in the same direction, walking slowly toward the next food signal, covering the floor of the abyssal plain in numbers large enough that deep-sea trawl surveys regularly bring up dozens of them at a time as an incidental catch, which is how most of what is known about them was learned, because at 4,000 meters depth, the sea pig is not easy to visit, and the research that has been done on living populations in situ has required some of the most expensive and technically demanding observation equipment marine science has ever deployed. The abyssal plain covers more than 50% of the Earth's surface. The sea pig is one of the most abundant large animals living on it. It has water balloon legs, it eats falling leftovers, it breathes through its digestive exit, it walks on inflatable water-filled appendages across a floor it is simultaneously eating, and lives in permanent darkness at 400 atmospheres of pressure in water just above freezing, eating the leftovers of 2 miles of other animals' meals. It does this in groups of thousands, oriented in the same direction, walking slowly toward the next food signal, covering the floor of the abyssal plain in numbers large enough that deep-sea trawl surveys regularly bring up dozens of them at a time as an incidental catch, which is how most of what is known about them was learned, because at 4,000 meters depth, the sea pig is not easy to visit, and the research that has been done on living populations in situ has required some of the most expensive and technically demanding observation equipment marine science has ever deployed.